All right, there we go. All right. Welcome, everybody, to Live at the Hive, episode 146. I'm your host, Dan Adelko, and today we're doing something a little bit different. We have had several interviews, but today we're going to be talking to my friend and business associate, Frank Cianciulli. Frank, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Dan.
Hey, anytime. So today's going to be a great episode where we're foregoing our normal what's new and what's working and digital marketing from the trenches. And today we're going to be talking a little bit more about 5 sanity strategies for entrepreneurs as we move into the holiday season, an unprecedented holiday season, obviously, right? Our economy has never gone through a stress test like this. And what we're going to be talking about are things that we as business owners and entrepreneurs can do. And Frank's got a vast amount of experience as a bootstrap entrepreneur over the past, how long, Frank? It's got to be 20 plus years.
19 years.
19 years. Wow. So you're like Yoda. Yeah. And you've bootstrapped the entire way. Is that?
We have, yes.
We have, yeah. That's the way to do it. That's for sure. So just to get kicked off, and so everybody learns a little bit more about you, maybe you can give us a little bit of your background and where you started and where you are today.
Oh, okay, great. Well, I kind of stumbled into my entrepreneurial accidentally, meaning, I didn't go to business school and had desires to run my own company. I got into my first industry by accident. It was just a summer job. I was at university. The plan was to go to law school, and one particular summer, I got a job for a teleconferencing company in sales. I didn't even know what teleconferencing was. The best way they described it was like party lines for businesses. But so I'm dating myself a bit because back then it was party lines. There was no internet. And I just fell in love with it. I had a couple of part-time jobs and summer jobs prior to that, selling Toronto Star newspaper subscriptions, like telemarketing. So this was kind of a B2B, and it was a real classy service, collaboration, conference calls, for investor relations and board of director meetings, all that sort of things. So people actually wanted to talk to me when I called them. And the difference was I brought a very aggressive sales approach that I was taught, calling 400, people a day, trying to sell them, 7 days of Toronto Star subscription for the price of 2.
Right.
And I just fell in love with it, and didn't end up doing the law school thing and just finished my undergrad. But I quickly decided, once I was good at it and realized that, this could be something I could see myself doing for a very long time. Especially since that company that I was working at it was very entrepreneurial. So it was a real great first entry into the workforce, very nurturing entrepreneurial culture. But that company was bought by Bell, and that's when things changed. Even though they left us alone for a bit, the soul got sucked out of it, I'd say. Mm-hmm. And that left an impact on me, because I was really enjoying it. And so I wanted to try and recreate that, at least take all the positives that I'd taken from that company and then expand on it. And so basically that's what we did. Bootstrapped it, put together some friends and family money, and started a conferencing company called Enunciate back in exactly August 7th of 2001. So I know it was 19 years.
It's amazing that you remember that. Exactly.
The anniversary. Well, it was Tuesday after the Civic Long Weekend. I'll never forget that. We resigned and off we went. And, a month later after starting our company, we get, 9/11 happens. So those times actually remind me a little bit about today. A lot of guys who started their businesses, right in the middle of this challenging time. But we got through it and flourished, and I think a lot of people will now as well. So we started that company, and just really worked really, really hard. Everyone thinks we got lucky. We didn't. A lot of other guys started around the same time, didn't even get close to have the kind of growth we had. I mean, some of those companies 20 years later are still around doing what we did after our first year. So it wasn't luck. Mm-hmm. We worked really, really hard. And along the way, I guess, people got inspired just both internally and externally. For example, the first company that we ventured out kind of beyond, besides what I knew, which was conferencing, was a good friend of mine from high school, was helping us with our recruitment because we were hiring so many people that after I hired everybody I knew, I needed help. And I knew he was in the business and he was good at it. And he came and saw me one day when we were expanding our offices. He wanted to come and have lunch. He says, "Listen, you really inspired me. I mean, it's unbelievable what you're doing here.
Mhm.
I think I want to start a staffing company with you. I said, me? I don't know. I don't know anything about the staffing business. And he says, well, don't worry about that. I'll run it. But if you can help me with maybe with some, the business plan, maybe some finances, if you can, give me your business, that'll cash flow a fair chunk of it right there. And then,
Yeah.
and that's when we started People Source. And so People Source had the similar success to Nunstate, Profit Hot 50 fastest growing companies and Profit 500, fastest growing companies, best places to work.
Mhm.
Entrepreneur of the Year, all the awards. The ego was completely stroked. Families happy. But the real key that happened when we started People Source, I think that's where the light bulb went off in my head. I'm thinking, building businesses is duplicatable, and I can duplicate myself because there's only so many businesses I can run, or anybody can run individually before you just get spread too thin. But I says, wow, if we know how to build businesses, we can create an ecosystem and kind of an entrepreneurial farm, so to speak. That's what we like calling it. Is that we can continue to build value-added companies and leverage the infrastructure we've already built, not only from the perspective that we've got a centralized finance and marketing and IT, all that stuff, but leveraging the relationships we build within the businesses.
Mhm.
And so we just kept going. Another great story is a guy by the name of Matthew Lay, who was, at Howard, he was a young guy, inside sales, no different than when I got started with that company. And within about a year or two, he, I open door policy, came into my office, and he says, listen, I got a great idea. I know we're doing conference calls, but I think the way of the future is webcasting. I mean, well, streaming. I said, what's that? He says, well, the best way to describe it is it's like a broadcast, one to many. There's a lot of broadcast guys in it, but I think it's, something we can really do well.
Mhm.
We've already got 5,000 corporate clients. And I says, okay, well, go ahead and give it a go and let me know how, we'll see how it goes. Within a few months, I start seeing 50, 70, $100,000 in revenue. I says, hold on a second, we got a business there. And that's when we incorporated the streaming network. 3
Yep.
years later, he's number 4 in the Hot 50, and today
Mhm.
we have, I think, the largest B2B webinar company in the country.
Yeah, I think
Most
one of
certainly
the
the best.
things, sorry, one of the things to just give everybody some background, back in 2001, for anybody that might be younger than both of us, so conference calling would be like Facebook and social media. It was like this mind-blowing thing that could happen, right? And Matt coming into your office and talking about this webcasting and webinar thing would have sounded like you're coming from Mars at the time.
Yeah, and something similar to what we're doing right here at this platform right here. This was a big production. This was like CBC Studios or CTV, right? A lot of guys that were in the early days were all from broadcasting backgrounds.
Right.
So it was a tough barrier to entry. Software was expensive.
Yeah, now we're logging onto our computers and flipping the webcam and off we go, right?
Exactly. So we just kept going, and over the years now, in 19 years, we've had, I would say not everyone, but I'd say most of our businesses have not only survived, they've thrived. We have 7 different companies that made the profit fastest growing or hottest startups.
Mm-hmm.
5 of them, I believe, went on to be Profit 100. Even companies like the Wish Group and People Store, been on the consecutively like 12 or 13 years on the fastest growing list. So we're very proud of everybody.
Cool.
Same thing with Wish Collaboration Streaming Network. They're always up high up on the fastest growing companies, which is just a testament to the culture I think we built.
Mm-hmm.
And the expectation is that we do our very best, and when you do that and you stay focused, mainly on the customer, good things will happen in your business.
Right. Well, it's also very interesting how you have this kind of shared resourcing model, some of the infrastructure that every business needs to run. Reinventing that can be hugely challenging, especially, finance teams and things like that.
Exactly.
So great model. Very interesting. So tell me, we don't have to go over what this year has been like. Looking out at the world, and you brought up the interesting analogy of 9/11, which was a very shocking and jarring scenario. Same thing with the pandemic here. What do you think this year? How has it differed this year for you over at the Wish Group and all of your companies compared to last year? What were some of the things that happened to you, and how did you deal with this? Because I mean, in March, it was basically the government just said, "You're done, go home," right?
Yeah, and that's I think that's where it felt similar to 9/11, right? It was like, I mean, I know with when it comes to viruses, there's a lot of people who talked about it where people weren't talking about flying planes into buildings or that type of terrorism, but still, it felt
Sure.
very similar.
Hmm.
Um, and the difference is, here they're telling you can't go to work or business is stopped and unemployment's soaring and companies are suffering and your clients are suffering and there's just so many unknowns. You're worried about the safety of your people.
Hmm.
So I mean, a lot of the differences were based on that. Just us generally going into this year, we had made some pivots just as far as our business strategy and our webcasting. I mean, we pretty much have a monopoly on all the enterprise space in Canada. Most of the big banks and financial institutions and big tech and big pharma use us already, but so we're looking to extend our portfolio to be able to bring this service, which is a high quality service of value, especially to marketers, to the small and medium market as well. And I mean, from that perspective, COVID, as far from a business perspective, helped us. We were able to help customers do that because all of a sudden they couldn't all their live events needed to be altered.
Yep.
Plus all the plans, communicating with our employees. So I mean, we got thrown into the fire. There was only so much we couldn't be prepared for that completely.
Yeah.
Because we weren't staffed up to handle the demand, but we've been, hiring and fighting to do that. So from that perspective, it's been good, but it's also been challenging because you're trying to do that when people working remotely. So, which is fine. We're able to use our technologies. We are in the collaboration business.
Sure.
But when you're also very, very busy and you're also trying to collaborate and get everybody on the same page, I mean, it had its challenges for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you really kind of hit the nail on the head in a couple of points there. First, some businesses, like, I mean, you can look at Zoom, right?
Yeah.
$660 million valuation from 100, right? A couple of
Yeah.
months ago. But the pivoting side of that, and you touched on it before when Bell bought Enunciate, right? It kind of turned it into a battleship instead of a PT Cruiser that you can just nimbly drive around. So that ability to pivot and the willingness to pivot is something I think that we've seen. You've got a good friend with Real Food for Real Kids. He had to do the same thing. And I think that's a key for all business owners is really be willing to, think non-linearly, go to places where you wouldn't normally go. Right.
There's all kinds of businesses, that didn't expect this. Like, for example, even if you go talk to anybody and even something like, I mean, we all know about the RVs and, everyone wants a cottage, and bikes were hard to find because everyone wanted to do some outdoor stuff. But even thinking of like patio furniture people, or try and find like a fire pit right now. It's very, very hard.
Yeah.
They're sold out. Patio furniture is all sold out. Anybody that wants to do any kind of renovations to their backyard or out or at exterior, I mean, they're busy, so I don't even know if they thought that would happen. So there's been a lot of these kind of pleasant surprises. Obviously the restaurants and the entertainment, that they've really been hit, and that's unfortunate because I think that,
it is.
There's better solutions there where I think we could have taken advantage of some of the food kitchen issues and been able to leverage restaurants a little more, because restaurants really contribute to the village, to the community in more ways than most people know. It's not, but
it's definitely a tough situation. We've had a couple of our clients on our side. Our one client was selling DIY cedar saunas, high price point, disposable item. When this happened, he pivoted very quickly into into planter boxes, and at a much obviously lower price point, sub $100 up to $150, depending on how elaborate you want to get. And his business went from potentially shutting its doors to exploding, and he went completely the other direction, was able to do it super quickly. I think it's that kind of creative thinking that as entrepreneurs and small business owners, the benefit we have is the ability to make those changes like that. And as opposed to being at a Bell where you'd have to go through layers of bureaucracy. Exactly. Yeah. So let me ask you a question here. what do you think if you had advice for business owners, what do you think are a couple of things you can do? Like, these are trying times. Moving forward, and we're going to circle back to this a little bit later on in our talk. What do you think a business owner should do in terms of their mental process right now? Anything else in terms of looking at the landscape and looking at their business?
Yeah, I mean, there's still a whole lot of unknowns. There's I know in the US they've opened up sooner than we have, but even here, I just saw a clip, TD towers and all the Cadillac Fairview, even commercial towers are opening now. So people are going back to work. But that being said, a lot of these temporary layoffs are turning into permanent layoffs. We don't, I mean, the economy was, and the market was overvalued and frothy even before this happened. So there was a lot of warning signs regardless. Obviously, it's not because of that this happened. It's obviously a pandemic, couldn't forecast that. That being said, I don't, the worst may be yet to come. I'm not even talking about the pandemic. Let's even say we get that wrapped up and we get a vaccine and everybody's not afraid of their health, which is obviously not going to happen, at least until sometime late next year, or at least early to mid next year. But regardless, anytime, especially big businesses, especially these big corporate companies that we talk about that aren't nimble, anytime they are, for whatever reason, are forced to have massive layoffs, generally speaking, I mean, it doesn't just start up immediately. And they start to assess how much, can they do the same amount of work with less? You'll hear a lot of people, if you talk to entrepreneurs, especially from 08, 09, saying, what we learned from the Great Recession was that, we could still do 100% of our output with maybe 80 or 90% of our staff or costs. So there's going to be a lag as far as getting everybody back to work. So therefore less consumption, which means all companies will generally probably not have great financial results in 2021. I highly doubt. I'm not an economist, but I can just common sense will tell me it's not going to be a good year.
Well, yeah, you've mentioned a few things, right? 9/11, the Great Recession, now the coronavirus pandemic. Yeah, I think I would totally agree with that.
Throw Y2K in there.
Yeah, absolutely. But the thing is I think it's great advice. Is like, we're not through it. And the reality is, as business owners, is we've had a lot of government subsidies. The government's never done this before.
That's right.
And they're stimulating as much as they can stimulate. But yeah, I think it's great advice to kind of look forward to 2021 and figure out how ways you can do more with less. And then also that pivoting strategy to try to find new revenue streams within.
Yeah. So, I love talking about the pivoting, and those are good examples that we talked about. But they may fade away, soon people aren't, everyone's got a bike. We're not going to be buying bikes, and everyone's going to be done. And, all of a sudden you'll be able to buy wood at the hardware store again. Apparently you couldn't find wood.
That's right.
You couldn't find lumber. That's going to end sooner than later, actually, I think. And same thing with, you're seeing at least in Canada, the real estate market. This is all scares me. I mean, people, and all because money's cheap so they can borrow. Yeah, but you're taking on more debt in a very frothy market. There could be high unemployment. When unemployment's the most important thing. Forget about what stock prices are worth, or Dow Jones Industrial, the S&P's trading at. That's irrelevant, because there's like 5 stocks, mainly Amazon and Tesla and those guys, that are artificially propping that up. But most companies are off their peaks, and their corporate earnings are going to be lower because people are going to spend less. They're not just going to not only not go to bars and restaurants as much, they're also going to buy less crap because the timing of this was interesting. We went into the spring and summer, and we were pent up in the spring. So of course in the summer, everybody wanted to get out and, well, let's see what happens now. Let's see what happens going into 2021. I don't mean to be pessimistic, but my advice to any entrepreneur, including myself, even though, okay, we're rocking and rolling now, we've had a great year, is, okay, well, hold on, let's build the cash reserves. Or if you have debt, don't take on any more if you can avoid it. I would say try and clean up your balance sheet any way possible. I mean, not that I'm proposing you cut staff or anything. I mean, we took advantage of the subsidy too, and we could, because we wanted to keep people at work. That being said, when those are over now, pretty much. So, you got to be careful. Better to be safe than sorry as far as a business, because you obviously you want to control your revenue, you want to do things to help grow your business, but at the same time, watching your expenses is another way to do that. And there's ways to do that, that don't involve letting go of people.
For sure. And I mean, part of our business at Honeypot is, and your business as well. And a lot of it is, there's a huge professional services side, is those people are absolutely invaluable to the success. But when I look even at our P&L and I look at, what tools do we need? What tools do we not need? With SaaS recurring subscription models for almost everything, there's invariably places you can tighten things up moving into the holiday season before, and I agree with your prediction on 2021. I feel like we've put a Band-Aid on it. Maybe the government's going to come out in 2021 and kind of do a second wave of their propping things up, but maybe not. Like we don't know. And so a lot of uncertainty.
I don't even know about the long-term impact of that from a taxation perspective and taking on too much debt. So I don't know that we should be, ecstatic about the government,
oh no, they'll get their money back from us.
Yeah,
unfortunately. Exactly. Unfortunately. So that's all really good advice. And I agree, like moving into the holiday season, I think that business owners and entrepreneurs need to have two states of mind. One is we got to go in and into this holiday season now and get prepared like today, right? We're pushing into Q4, so make September your month for planning all of those holiday initiatives and Q4 initiatives on the B2B side, right? Year ends are year ends, and hopefully you can get things over the line. And then for the smaller other businesses, maybe let's talk about some of those folks, right? The restaurants and some of the the retailers that are really, they're the lifeblood of the economy. So moving into that, any advice for small businesses that, maybe thinking of, I am always shocked when I hear anecdotes, because in my brain, coming from the e-com world and doing this stuff for years, not having a Shopify store or some kind of an online presence to me is crazy. But the reality is I think a lot of businesses aren't there yet.
Yeah, no, exactly. So that's a great one right there. I think if you don't have an e-com store, if your business truly isn't online, or you're not taking advantage of digital marketing or social media marketing, these are things that you can implement in your business now. Inevitably, when I look at businesses, I look at a lot of companies potentially to invest in or to purchase. A lot of the mismanagement is not necessarily headcount, although there's always some people that maybe have too many employees given the state that their company is at. But it's usually, fancy offices are too big of an office or a footprint for where they currently are, because they're just so worried about growth. And I'm like, no, don't do that. You'll figure out, get a bigger space when you need a bigger space. Don't forecast, that you're going to grow to 40 people, but you got 10 right now. That's not a good strategy.
Right.
Unless you're printing money, which usually isn't the case. So yeah, I would say that investing in, Shopify right now and getting a site, understanding that, maybe, I know a lot of guys that talk when you're hitting the mattresses and in difficult financial times, talk about cutting marketing. I'm not so sure. I think in this day and age, I'd rather cut sales, but stay invested in marketing, keep your name out there, keep the brand floating. That's a sign of strength, and it's economical if you do it correctly.
Well, obviously you're preaching to the choir on that one for sure. But I actually agree. It's the herd mentality of investing too, right? People tend to actually buy high and sell low when you need to be doing the opposite. I think, we've heard from a lot of businesses, partners, clients, that they're, maybe we got to cut back. And our comeback is exactly what you're saying, right? Which is now's the time, right? To get out there. Right?
Well, yeah, you use a great analogy like this, like stock markets, right? Where people when the stock market's at all-time high, people want to buy.
It's insanity, right?
Something that happens, like a bit of a panic. I mean, pandemic is one of them, but anything, right? There's a lot of weird things that happen, in life that the markets overreact. So the very companies that you wanted to buy, that you like them, they're on sale, and you want to sell instead of buying more of the stock. It's counterintuitive. Same thing with, like, even right now in these times. I mean, I don't know, but I'm pretty darn sure if you called, local newspaper, I mean, using a bad example, I don't know anybody advertising in newspapers, but let's say you did, or wanted to buy ad space, I'm pretty sure right now you get a really good deal on ad space, and you actually have more people actually reading it too.
For sure. Well, and that's the funny thing that we find, because we manage several $1 million of ad spend between Google and Facebook for our clients. We've seen increases in some areas, but overall, I mean, travel's been wiped out, and they were a huge portion of that. And that auction system has really opened it up in a lot of ways with reduced prices. There's more inventory because your big hospitality and travel companies have really scaled it back. This is a David versus Goliath, and really the Facebook and Google platforms are kind of your slingshot if you're a smaller guy out there trying to get some visibility for your customers. Yeah. So I totally agree. 100% Shopify store, get yourself online, figure out, delivery services. I'll tell you a quick analogy and now I'm dating myself as an old guy, but back in the 90s, I bought a Japan camera center, 1 hour photo lab that was dying. Like it did like $30,000 in revenue the entire year. And I was 18 years old. And they said they're going to shut it down. And I said, I'll buy it. I just opened my mouth, right? Like an idiot. Yeah. And then a day later, the president of Japan Camera called me and said, "You want to buy it?" I basically bought it for nothing, because they were like, they'd rather have an open door than a closed store, right? So, but we were in downtown Kitchener at the time, and it was just a wasteland at the time. There was nothing happening there. It's been revitalized now, thank goodness. So one of the things that we did was a delivery service for 1 hour photo finishing for both real estate agents. That nobody was doing that, right? So we just got a magnetic sign, slapped it on the side of my car. We'd print the stuff up and then run it over to them with free delivery. I think that, some age old, like it's like pizza, right? Free delivery. We'll drive it to you. And I think that's just a simple thing that some small businesses can really just hit the ground running and just start doing it very easily, right?
Yeah, and I mean, as far as now would be the time to really become customer focused. I mean, really, really spoil your customers, so to speak. Go above and beyond. And there's even strategies from a cash flow perspective, that might help you do that. Whether if it's give them incentive to pay quicker if cash flow is an issue. But just, if you got to keep a team, then really get them proactive, because a lot of companies say, well, there's not much going on. There's not much for our people to do. We might as well lay them off. There's always something to do. How about, it's like me. I mean, when I was quarantined for a couple of weeks, I mean, I caught up on so many projects that I had for like 3-4 years building up around the house. Same thing with your company. There's all kinds of things that are very important for you to do to your business. If you had a business, a plan, or did a strategy session once a year, you never actually executed on those things. Now is a good time to do those things. Yeah. Because when you come out of this, you'll be way stronger as a company. So this is the time for just getting your business in order all around.
Yeah, for sure. And I really like the one point you just made about kind of over servicing your existing customers, right? And really treating them. This is something we see on the marketing side all the time. A lot of businesses have this mentality of I need new customers, right? And really almost neglect their existing customers, when the reality is if it's harder to gain new customers, gee, if I could upsell my existing customer base by 20% or 10%, if I can figure out a way to give them a new value-added service or whatever it might be, pushing in through the end of the year, I've already got a hopefully loyal and good relationship with my customers. That's a great way for small businesses to just, I mean, if I had a small business with, like a small retail store, I mean, get on the phone and call every single one of your customers and ask them how they're doing. Right? Absolutely. Super simple.
There's no excuse. There's never a time in business where you should be sitting around. And I'm a little surprised and shocked when I see or hear about, is this not much going on? Not much going on. Okay, fine. But why don't you make a bunch of stuff going on? There's all kinds of proactive things you can do to start rolling out in your business that you've never had the time to do because you were too busy. So now do them. And they're gonna pay off both short term and long term.
For sure, 100%. I couldn't agree more. You kind of Steve Jobs. They used to say about Steve Jobs is he would create his reality distortion field. Yeah, and that was his thing. And he truly believed it. And I believe that that's actually the case, is you can create your own kinetic energy around your business if you're willing to do that. The other day you mentioned to me that, you know, every successful entrepreneur is inherently, there's a salesperson in there.
Yeah.
Inside whatever you might be doing, it doesn't matter, right? And I think sometimes that the sales side is almost looked down upon or thought of as being, I mean, bad sales is bad sales, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, some of your thoughts on sales and how that affects businesses would be awesome.
Yeah. So the other thing that I see when there's two things we talked about, you know, kind of the way people spend money. But the biggest difference I find between successful businesses, at least entrepreneurial companies up to, call it 100 million in sales, maybe even bigger, but most of the time is that the CEO or the founder doesn't want to, or looks down, or thinks that, oh, I shouldn't be doing sales. I completely disagree with that. I think every fast growth company, for sure, you know, you've got the CEO be the main rainmaker. I mean, definitely at least until $10-20 million in revenue. That's 100%.
Yeah.
And no one's going to come and build your business. The key aspect to any successful company, beyond, I'm not talking about multi-billion-dollar multinationals. I mean, obviously they got such reserves and at that point capital to invest in marketing and branding and headcount. But I'm talking most entrepreneurial companies. You know, no one's going to come and build that company for you. If they're going to do that and bootstrap it, they'd rather just do it for themselves. Or if they're good enough to be able to do that, they're at one of these big companies, so they're hard to attract. Yep. It's not just affording them. It's not a matter of affording them, because you know, you don't need to spend big money on sales teams or sales leadership or even marketing. You just got to be creative. Yep. You know, you're in your company anyway, so if you bring in business, then you're not even paying for it. You're not even paying a commission. So, and everyone's watching you. So there's a reason. Running a sales team is a different nuance, a different man, in my opinion. You know, and I study management and businesses, and I will argue anyone that tells me a sales manager is the same as any other manager. They're different. They're different. Salespeople are different because they're dealing with rejection.
Yep.
They live by the sword. They die by the sword. So they're a lot more like soldiers for a country. That's what sales team is for a company. That's your army. That's your lifeblood. Everything's important. I'm not going to say they're not. Accounting's important. Marketing's important. All that's important. But I can tell you, until you sell something, you don't have a business. So sales does solve all problems. But you're not going to hire good salespeople. You're not going, even if you hire good salespeople that have had success, they won't be successful in your company if they don't see you're willing to do what you're asking them to do. I don't know why that is. Oh, I do have some theories, mainly because of their psyche. What they've got to get psyched up to do battle every day. They're not just doing the accounting. They're not just, not to diminish accounting function, but accounting function, you get bills, you input them in a system, you call people to get money, you do the books. Same thing with even marketing, right? You're doing some creative pieces or what have you. Operations, you're producing a product. I mean, not to diminish, all that's important, but that function you can do anywhere. Salesperson needs to feed on the energy of others. They've got to be in the same room and have the energy. There's a lot of skill that goes into be a salesperson, because you don't reach a pinnacle there. Like
for sure,
the better you get, the more you sell in a certain amount of time.
And it's one of those things, like, for example, Honeypot, we've never had a sales team. I've always been the one just doing the sales. And it's worked out well for us. And I kind of look at it like, if I had a sales team in my particular example here, and I sat back and I went out to the golf course and said, just, go line them up. That's not really motivating. I mean, you mentioned earlier too, if you're at a multi-billion-dollar corporation, if you work at Apple, you probably got some stock in there. You get nice bonuses. You've got you get all of those things, well compensated. Obviously, as smaller businesses, we can't compete on those levels. We just don't have the money to do it. So to motivate a team in a smaller environment, like you say, it would be kind of like storming Normandy on D-Day, and the generals just like walk away and go on vacation, right? How motivated will the troops be to kind of jump in there? I think it's hugely important for small business entrepreneurs to to be down in those trenches. I mean, that's one of the reasons we call this digital marketing from the trenches, right? There's no executive suites over here. But I couldn't agree more. And sales there's a nuance to sales. You know, it's not a, it's a relationship building function, right?
There's so much that goes into it.
Yep.
From a skill perspective, it's not taught in school. You know, you've got there's a lot of resources, but ultimately it's self-taught and taught by by your colleagues within the company. You've got to learn how to tie in, you know, understanding personalities. You've got to understand, you know, how to read people and how to communicate,
how to manage objections and turn them into positives, right? Like that's
so much understanding how to get that passion out when you're talking to customers, because they buy your passion, they buy your belief system. Then you have to have activity as well for a number of reasons. It's like, you know, we're working out, you know, you can't, some people do sales like they work out. They work out really, really hard for a couple of days and then take a month off, and then, you know, work out a day or two and then take 2 weeks off. You can't. It's got to be consistent, day in, day out. And you got to shock the muscle. You can't just do the same things every day, even if they work. It won't, for some reason, I don't even know the science behind that, but it just stops working. So then you've got to try different methods even in your sales day. And so, you know, those types of things, you know, you got to understand how to treat them. A lot of egos in sales. I mean, I just find it difficult, or I've rarely seen it. Maybe in tech companies, maybe when you're building great software that sells itself, maybe. But I've yet to really see a fast growth entrepreneurial, like a startup or entrepreneurial firm, where the founder isn't the main rainmaker for at least the, you know, the first 2 to 5 years of the company. And then even after that, though, you know, even after that, you got you got $100 million company. As the CEO, you still got to drop down and land a deal. You still got to show everyone. I don't know.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, you know, and I think it's important that that the people at the top of small businesses are the ones that are building those relationships, forging those relationships. Like, one of the benefits we have, and we talk about this in the world of Ogilvy and these massive WPP style agencies, is we're small, and that's good. We'll have that personal connection, and therefore one of the things, like another tip that I think is important, and you mentioned it in terms of the sales, is being very patient with your prospects. I mean, we've had to do 4, 5, 6 hour long sessions with our prospects, and you know what? That's okay, because that's a trust building. I mean, it can get tiring. It's time consuming, right? But fundamentally, you're relationship building, right? And we, you know, before all of this stuff happened, it wasn't so much like that. But fundamentally, it's a benefit, because when you land that deal, you build that relationship. You've already shown that, hey, it's you know, like the Gary Vaynerchuk analogy that I really do like is jab, 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 right hook, which is the jabs are, I'm giving you stuff for free, my friend, and I'm not asking for anything in return. I'm here to help you. I'm here to help you. And then at a certain point, it's like, let's work together. Right. And that's already been built. So I think that's something that a lot of, you know, everyone that I personally know in business, like yourself, for example, has that mentality, and that does make them successful to whatever degree they want success, whether they want, you know, a safe harbor business, or they want to build a multi-million-dollar public entity. For sure. So we're, you know, we've talked about a lot of these big things, and I think one thing to kind of touch on a little bit is it's been a stressful year. We've all felt it in very strange ways, whether your businesses, I think whether, you know, businesses have done well, there's still this level of anxiety with, you know, all sorts of things coming at you at the same time. So for a business owner or entrepreneur, any advice in terms of, you know, reducing that anxiety? We're getting to year ends too. Taxes are coming due. It's going to get cold out. Holidays a stressful time, you know, like boom, boom, boom. Any advice for business owners and entrepreneurs on stress reduction management? What are some of the knowledge bombs you can drop on those folks right now?
Yeah, and I mean, I think this is more important than ever, but I'm an advocate of I don't want to call it, not work-life balance necessarily, but the way I like to say it, not work-life balance, because I think as an entrepreneur, you're never really in balance. Well, you've got to get out of balance in order to get it balanced. But basically, it looks more like a stock chart. The trend is always up in a stock market, but it's bouncing along the way. Same thing with an entrepreneur, right? You're gonna have some really anxious and long days, and then you're gonna have times where you're able to unwind and maybe unplug and head up to the cottage for a couple of weeks. So I like to think of it more like, as entrepreneurs, we're more like finely tuned athletes, or a fine race car. So if you're an athlete, you've got to have ample time to recover. Obviously, you're going to train hard, you're going to compete hard, but I mean, you're going to have a staff to look after. You're going to have people that massage you and train you, and so you're in your diet, you're eating the right things, getting the right type of rest. So entrepreneur is the same. You've got to take that time out. You don't have to spend money to do it necessarily. I mean, if you have the means to do spa days and just kind of relaxation techniques, or you have the ability to have a personal trainer and get in the gym and all that kind of stuff. But even if you don't have the money, you can meditate. Meditation's for free. I like to stretch and meditate every night when I'm reading. I like to stay active in the gym, because I learned early in my career that obviously it's nice to just be in general good physical shape, but the one other real benefit of actual cardiovascular exercise, or actually weight training, is a stress reduction. And even fights depression and all that kind of stuff, which as entrepreneurs, that happens a lot.
For sure.
So it's good to do that and make sure you maintain a routine, even through this whole COVID thing. Even when the gym started closing and all that, I still kept the routine. Even if I wasn't able to go to a gym, then I kind of created my own. I started bench pressing, the liquid detergent and stuff like that. Lots of push-ups and pull-ups and all that kind of stuff. But I kept the same routine as far as waking up and doing my coffee, and then have my shower and get in front of my computer, and then working out and all that kind of stuff. So, I'm a big advocate in do whatever relaxes you. I remember one of the things that I did when I first really had a bit of a breakdown when I started my first company, and putting in all those hours and all that stress and pressure. One of the first thing I did was not only to do like cardiovascular and gym stuff, is like I hadn't played, let's say, men's league hockey in like, I don't know, 10 or 15 years, 20 years maybe. Yeah. And that was critical, not only for the exercise, but man, it was amazing. As soon as I got to that locker room and started chatting with the guys and got on the ice and having the beers in the locker room after, I didn't think of business at all. And I felt like a kid again, and I was playing, and I needed that.
Yeah.
A lot of guys like golf for the same thing. Golf's a little bit different. Golf adds to my stress, not alleviates it, but still, some people like it. You're out. I mean, golf's great because you're outside and you're getting the fresh air and all that stuff. But those things are very important. And I know some people, think all that stuff costs money. Okay, fine. If you don't have the resources, but you don't have to spend a lot of money for any of that. You go for a walk in the park is free. Yeah. Stretching's free, and working out in your home is free.
For sure. I think you made a really good point about, for entrepreneurs, that the notion of work-life balance, like you do see it, all over the place on LinkedIn, people talking, you have to maintain your work-life balance. I think if you're a bootstrapped entrepreneur, a small business person, it's really hard when you know that you've got a team it depends on the business for their salaries, and you've got customers, and that stress level can be elevated even in really good times. It's very much like a mental 180, right? Business is great, and I'm more anxious than I've ever been. Fear of
it never goes away. Like, I mean, I was fortunate my first company, it scaled very quickly. It's like, so you get to the point, we got to the point where we knew we were going to make it really early, even early compared to what we didn't feel was early, but it was. Yeah. But then you have a different kind of anxiety. Then you're great, you got money, so you can hire all these people and have these fancy offices. Yeah. But there's also, oh my God, what if this turned around? What happened if something like this happened and COVID didn't give my business any positivity? Oh my God, I have 100 people. I'm going to lay off 90 of them. Yeah. I got all these huge offices and I can't pay the rent. Like, so it never kind of goes away. Yeah. So back to, going into the new year and being careful. That's why I'm always careful. I mean, people make fun of me because I'm not cheap by any stretch. I mean, I fuel my business and my life as well. I mean, I like fine things, but I don't like waste. And there's a big difference, every dollar's got to be spoken for, and we just don't like we don't like to waste any money. And so I still print on both sides of the paper, and that's a comical thing going on in the office. But it's an attitude.
Yep.
It's not, well, Frank, you're not going to save money on the paper. Well, I'm going to save a little bit of money, but yes, it's not a money thing. It's an attitude. It's a frame of mind thing. It's like when I go to these startup companies, they're not profitable yet, but they've raised a lot of money, and they got expensive Herman Miller furniture and art on the walls, and the owners are driving nicer cars than I am, and I'm a real business making real money. Yep. It's like, no, that's the wrong message. I'm not saying they don't always make it, because a lot of those companies end up getting funded, and they make it. So I'm not going to say that they don't. But they do. In Silicon Valley, they even know there's an actual science to it.
We have to have a whole other live.
That's
hours. We've already had several topics about this. Yeah, well, we've had several conversations about these valuations and
lean and mean.
Lean and mean and be realistic in how you truly put a valuation on your company. But people love to put a 10x valuation on net gross revenue, which to me is just fantasy land. But again, that's a rabbit hole that we would go down for hours, for sure. I do really, I do like the advice of not just obviously things like using the Calm app and meditating, but if possible, are those social activities to help you just forget about life, even if it's for a couple of hours. Super important. The last thing I think that's really important that I've really noticed as a benefit over, the last several months with the pandemic is, there's always like the Bell Let's Talk days and things like that. And those are really great. But I think that the topic of people being comfortable talking about anxiety and saying, you know what, and I don't know anybody that doesn't have a certain level of anxiety. It's just a different direction that it comes from and a different source. So I think that these types of, like, we're on year 3 of our live stream and podcast, right? But you're seeing people communicating, and because they've been cooped up, they're starting to talk more about things without it having a stigma to it. And I think that's a super important thing. Is the ability to talk about it.
Absolutely. And I'm a big advocate of that. I mean, even just like, I know entrepreneurs would go therapy. I'd been to psychoanalysis early in my career, and it almost felt like a business coach. But there's really great organizations out there. Entrepreneurs organizations, one I'm involved with. I'm the president of one of the Toronto chapters. Yep. And it's a peer-to-peer group where you're having really fabulous social and learning events in the GTA. But entrepreneurs organization is global. Yep. But one thing that they do is they call forum groups. You have 6 to 8 entrepreneurs in a group meet monthly for like 3 hours, and it's a structured meeting where they, you start off the meeting with just a 1-word opener as far as how you're feeling coming into that meeting, and what's going well, and what's going bad, and what could be better in your personal, family, and business life. And then there's formal presentations around that. And what I got great value out of that is it's just basically realizing that I'm not in this alone. There's other guys going through similar challenges. And being an entrepreneur, is important to be, a part of a peer group, I think, because a lot of the friends that I keep, all my same friends from high school and grade school, even if they haven't become business people for sure, but there's only so many things I can talk to them about, because they just probably won't understand the challenges of an entrepreneur. Where if you're around other entrepreneurs, even if it's just some of your suppliers and your client, just, if you have like us, you and I, Dan, obviously we do a lot of business together. We can just grab a beer and just talk about the challenges, and that's therapeutic.
Oh, sure. And we've even just texted back and forth on the weekends a few times, right? Like, it can be as simple as that. Yeah. I really like, I didn't know that you guys did that in the EO, but that is really interesting. I think, mentor up, mentor down, mentor laterally and horizontally. And I've had conversations with clients and just been like, oh man, it's the end of the month, and it just, bookkeeping and going over all that stuff. Just having some of those conversations even out of the blue, I think is a very healthy way. And that support system, like the team at Honeypot, for example, we operate like a family, lots of support. I couldn't do anything without all of them. And hopefully, whenever there's something going on with them, April, our director of client success, just moved this week. Take the week off, go, and we've all been there. You don't want to, moving during a pandemic sounds like a lot of fun. But yeah, that creating that network and really keeping that network close is fantastic advice. Some really great takeaways. We're 49 minutes into a 45-minute live. We could talk for another 45 easily, I imagine. But Frank, I want to thank you for taking time on a end of day on Friday of a long weekend.
Oh, you're welcome, and thank you. It was really fun to be here.
Yeah, it was great, and we'll have you on again, and maybe we'll talk about that Silicon Valley startup valuation stuff as a separate topic.
Awesome, looking forward to it. Anytime.
All right, you have a great weekend, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us for Live at Hive episode 146, the special with Frank Cianciulli. Have a great weekend, safe weekend, stay safe, and disconnect, unplug, and try to enjoy the end of summer.